Devil Worship, the Sacred Books and Traditions of the Yezidis by Isya Joseph. Their customs. Marriage. The Yezidis are endogamic. They forbid union between the secular and religious classes, as also within certain degrees of relationship. A sheikh's son marries only a sheikh's daughter. So peers' sons, peers' daughters. A layman cannot marry a sheikh's or a peer's daughter, but he may take for a wife a qawwal's or a kochak's daughter, and qawwal's or kochak's sons may marry layman's daughters. But if a layman marries a sheikh's or a peer's daughter, he must be killed. Marriage is for life. The New Testament also calls for, I wouldn't call it the New Testament, but for reference sake, let's call it the New Testament, also forbids divorce. But is frequently dissolved, divorce being as easy to obtain among them as among al-Muslimin. When a man wants to get rid of his wife, he simply lets her go. Polygamy is allowed, but usually confined to rich men, who generally have 2 wives. The number of wives is limited to 6, except for the amir. A man must have money or cattle in order to be able to get married. The price is called qalam. A respectable girl will not sell herself at a low price. Referring to marriage as selling yourself, that's not exactly the right terminology, but parents get rich if they have several pretty girls. They are the father's property. The qalam dowry is usually 30 sheep or goats, are the price of them. The man must give presents to the relatives of his bride, parents, brothers, etc. If a couple love each other and cannot marry because the man has no money to pay his sweetheart's father, they elope. They usually make arrangements before elopement as to where they will stay for a few weeks to escape detection. Some strong men accompany them when they elope. The father of the girl with his relatives follow. If they catch the fugitives, bloodshed may ensue, but if they succeed in escaping, they return after some time and are then forgiven, according to a Kurdish proverb. Everything is pardoned the brave. The couple choose one another. The girl informs her mother that she loves so-and-so. The latter informs her husband. The father acquaints the father of the young man with the fact. When they agree, the daughter is given to the young man. His kindred come to the house of the bride's father on an appointed day and give the girl a ring. Then they dance, rejoice all night, play, wrestle, and eat black raisins. What if you prefer the yellow ones? After that, the young couple are allowed to arrange nuptial meetings in the company of a matron who is presented with a gift. When the time of marriage comes, the family of the bridegroom invites the relatives. Each takes with him a silk handkerchief as a present for the bride. For 3 days they drink arak, sing, and dance to the sound of flutes and drums at the house of the young man. Remember Surah 8:55, forbidding that thing very specifically? So, obviously they're not Muslim. No, it takes more than that to put someone outside of Islam, but anyways. After that, the women, 2 by 2, ride on horseback together, and likewise the men. The men take with them their children, who ride behind them. In this manner, they go to the bride's house, discharging their guns as they proceed. When they reach the house, they all discharge their guns together. Hearing the sound, the father comes out, and according to the custom, asks the visitors what they want. They respond, "Your daughter," all answering at once. Then he goes in and tells his wife, after putting upon their daughter a scarlet kalia, a veil, which covers her from head to foot. They bring her out. Every one of the children takes a spoon from the bride's house and sticks it in his turban. After being brought into the house of the bridegroom, the bride is kept behind a curtain in the corner of a darkened room for 3 days, and the young man is not allowed to see her during this period. On the 3rd day, the bridegroom is sought early in the morning and led in triumph by his friends from house to house, receiving at each a small present. He is then placed within a circle of dancers, and the guests and bystanders, wetting small coins, stick them to his forehead. The money is collected as it falls in an open handkerchief held by his companions. After this ceremony, a number of the young men who have attached themselves to the bridegroom lock the most wealthy of their companions in a dark room until they are willing to pay a ransom for their release. The money thus taken is added to the dowry of the newly married couple. On the evening of the 3rd day, the sheikh takes the bridegroom to the bride, putting the hand of one in that of the other, covering the couple with a kalia. He asks the bride, "Who are you?" "I am the daughter of so-and-so," responds she. Then he asks the bridegroom the same question. After receiving an answer, the sheikh asks, "Will you take this young woman as a wife? And do you want this young man as a husband?" After hearing each say yes, the sheikh marks their shoulders and foreheads with red ink and hands them a stick. As each one holds one end of it, he asks them to break it in the middle, leaving one half in the hand of each. Then the sheikh says, "So you remain until death breaks you asunder." And the fire banks, we could say that the red represents the fire banks. And we see resemblance between the Mazdayasnahe Zarathustrahe ceremony, in that the touching is not supposed to occur until the marriage. And they hold hands, and there's a veil on top of that. And when this is done, he takes the couple to a room and locks them in, waiting at the door. After a while, the bridegroom knocks at the door 3 times. Understanding the signal, the priest discharges his gun, and all bystanders outside follow his example. After shouting and dancing for some time, the sheikh sends them home. When they first meet, the newly wedded couple strikes his young wife with a small stone as a token of his superiority over her. For 7 days, they stay at home and do no work. Now, if the husband dies first, the wife goes to her father's house. With the Yezidis, the family bonds are stronger than those of the tribe. The family proper consists of parents and their children, married and unmarried, living in the same house. Respect for parents and elder persons is considered a virtue, as it is among all the Eastern peoples. The head of the family is the sole proprietor of the possessions of the family and holds full control over his wife and children, who are bound to obey him. Only personal objects and dress are the property of the wife. He can punish his wife and the children. If a son leaves his father's house, he is beyond the father's authority, but not beyond his moral influence. A father is to maintain his family, defend it, and answer charges brought against its members. Next to the father in authority stands the eldest son. Women are considered inferior to men. Just like in the Bible, they're also quite explicitly listed as such. Married women must obey their husbands. Well, that's not quite the same thing as saying inferior, but they work like men, they till the ground, they take care of cattle, fight the enemy, and are courageous and very independent. The lion and the serpent is actually metaphors that we see with some of this. Ahriman, under those guises. This enables the young women to choose their sweethearts and run away with them. They converse with men freely. A woman does not conceal her face unless she is stared at, when she draws a corner of her mantle over her face. Married women are dressed entirely in white, and their shirt is of the same cut as the man's, with a white kerchief under their chin, and another over their heads, held by the agal or wooden cord of the Bedouins. The girls wear white skirts and drawers, and over them colored zaboons, long dresses open in the front and confined at the waist by a girdle ornamented with pieces of silver. They bind fancy kerchiefs around their heads, and adorn themselves with coins as well as with glass and amber beads. The men wear shirts closed up to the neck, and the religious law forbids them to wear the common Eastern shirts open in the front. Their shirts are the distinctive mark by which the Yezidi sect is recognized at once. They are clothed besides with loose trousers and cloaks, both of white and with a black turban, from beneath which their hair falls in ringlets. So we're seeing similarity with the stereotypes of the Jews. They usually carry long rifles in their hands, pistols in their girdles, and a sword at their side. Because despite persecution, they gotta be, or because of it, they gotta be ready to fight at any time. In their physical characteristics, they are like the Kurds, wild, rough, and supposedly uncultured, although we see they're very richly cultured through some of this information we've gone over and will go over. They are muscular, active, and capable of bearing great hardship. In general, they are a fine, manly race, tall or of medium stature, with large chest, strong, deep voice, audible afar, clear, keen eye, frank and confident, are fierce and angry, nose of moderate length, and fairly small head. Their legs are rather short, but the soles of their feet are large. Their complexion is usually dark, and their eyes are black. But there are different types. The predominant type is tall, with black hair, fine, regular nose, and bluish-brown eyes. The rest are of shorter stature, with long features, light bright eyes, and large irregular nose. The Yezidis sometimes shave the hair off their head, leaving only a long, thin forelock. Kind of like what you see in Buddhism and some Hindu groups before that. And we see they're not quite the Kurds. They're not quite the Turks or the Kazakh or the Kyrgyzstan, or however you say that. But they're kind of present in a lot of these countries down to Syria and we see their influence stretching far wider than that. But remember, Yazidi, a wide variety of beliefs and practices, and we're only going over a small portion of what can be said, but a more historical portion of what could be said to be a Christianity/Sufism influence group. The funerals. If a young or well-known man dies, they make his likeness in a wooden form and clothe it in the dead man's clothes. Then the musicians play mourning tunes, while the relatives stand around the model. After wailing for a while, they walk in procession around a circle around the form, and now they kneel down to receive a blessing from it. As those who come to the scene, the rumbly of the tumbly, according to their custom, ask the parents of the dead man, "What have you?" They reply, "We have the wedding of our son." They continue wailing for 3 days. Afterward, they distribute food on behalf of the dead. For a year, they give a plate of food with a loaf of bread daily to some person, thinking that thereby they are feeding their own dead. On the 7th and 40th day from the time of death, they visit the grave to mourn over their lost one. Now, if the dead be a common man, he is not honored with such a ceremony? Well, perhaps not the loaf of bread and plate of among a plate of food, but the other, why not? He is usually buried in an hour or two after his death. The funeral rites are simple. The body of the Yazidi, like that of a Muslim, is washed in running water. After being laid on a flat board, they dress him with his former clothes, close the openings in his body with pieces of cotton, place the sacred clay of Sheikh Adi in his mouth, on his face and forehead, under the shoulders and eyes, and on his stomach. The Islamic burial, yeah, they rinse and wipe you off, and then they just wrap you in a cloth, and that's it. Or maybe 2 cloths, depending on what's available. And none of the grave goods, and not being stuffed with cotton, and yeah, that's not part of but what does cotton and stuff mean? We know about the sheikh, the sacred clay and stuff, but this done, they carry the dead on the board to the cemetery. The qawwals, burning incense, lead the procession, and the immediate relatives, especially the women, following, dressed in white and throwing dust over their heads, and accompanied by male and female friends and neighbors. If the dead be a man, they then dance. The mother or wife holding in one hand the sword or shield of the dead, and in the other the long locks cut from her own hair. They bury him with his face turned towards the North Star. It's, in many cultures, believed that Shaitan, his direction is the north, has said to have a throne in the north. Also, the antipoles of Mecca, Medina, Jerusalem, basically the same region of the South Pacific, but the north is a very particular direction in Satanism. Other things too, but everyone present throws a little dust over the grave while saying, "A man, thou wert dust, and hast returned to stone, to dust today." Then the sheikh says, "When we say, 'Let us rise, go home,' then the dead man will say, 'I will not go home with the people.' And when he tries to get up, his head will strike the stone, when he will say, 'Oh, I am among the dead.' When they return home, the family slaughters oxen and sheep and gives meat to the poor. The poor kill 4 or 5 sheep, the rich 100. The Kochaks prophesy of the dead, whether he will return to the earth or will go to another world." We find that they spread the belief of reincarnation. This culture could be said were even Hinduism, but the Greeks had it before Hinduism, the reincarnation idea. Some of the earliest artifacts of what you could call the Yazidi culture, with the 7, or perhaps Malik Tau is a sort of a Lucifer character with above that. So there's the 7, a group of 7, or the 8, with the 7 sons of the Phoenix, as it would be called. But anyways, there's some variety. They hold that some will be eternally condemned, but that all will spend an expiatory period, that the dead have communion with the living, in which the good souls dwelling in the heavens make revelations to their brethren on earth. 3. Nationality. 4 different theories have been advanced to the race to which the Yezidis belong. There are those who think them to be of Indo-Aryan origin, for there is a type among them that has white skin, a round skull, blue eyes, and light hair. And there are those who suppose them to be Arabs, on the ground that the color of the skin of another type is brown, their eyes are wide, their lips are thick, and their hair is dark. The Western writers, moreover, have in the past always taken them for Kurds because of the close resemblance of the two in appearance and manners. In his La Turquie de Assi, Vital Kunet says that though the Yezidis have been taken for Kurds, they can no longer be regarded as such, for in many ways they resemble other nationalities. Well, they've taken part in various nationalities. Even this group has taken part in these different colors and stuff, so. On the other hand, Hormuzd Rassam in his Ashur and the land of Nimrud seem to agree with those who suppose them to be of Assyrian origin. He bases this influence on the independent and martial spirit which they possess, and their tendency to rebel against their oppressors, which, according to him, may be taken as an indication of ancestral inheritance. And the locality. But remember, Yazidi can be considered a term, the merging of the fire and the clay beings. So it's not just one strain of tradition that we're looking at. That we're thinking of, but we're looking at one. Locality. The Yezidis dwell primarily in 5 districts. The most prominent among them is of Sheikhan. This term in the Persian plural of sheikh. Is the Persian plural of sheikh. An old man, it signifies the country where the sheikhs dwell. This district lies northeast of Mosul, covering a wide area in which are many villages. It is their Palestine. In it lies their Mecca, Lalish, where their sacred shrine, the tomb of Sheikh Adi, is. Lalish is the center of their national and religious life. It is situated in a deep, picturesque valley. Its slopes are covered with a dense wood, and at the bottom of it runs the sacred water. Other notable places here are 2 adjoining villages, Ba Ashikha and Bahazani, at the foot of the mountain of Rabban Hormuzd, a 6-hour ride from Mosul. The former is the center of tombs of their sheikhs. The latter is their principal burial place, to which bodies are carried from all the various districts. It was formerly a Christian village with a monastery. And Ba Adri, northeast of the city of Mosul, about 10 hours away, is the village where their emir resides. It is close to Sheikh Adi's. And so we see here that reasons why their cult could have survived is that they went among the Christian monastics and the Sufis to survive, and perhaps regarded certain of them with particular importance, or used their memory, their legacy, their energy towards their own means. Next in importance is Jabr Sinjar. The term Sinjar is Persian, meaning a bird, perhaps an eagle. It signifies that its inhabitants are, like the eagle, safe and cannot be caught. Sinjar is about 3 days' journey from Mosul. It is a solitary range, 50 miles long and 9 miles broad, rising in the midst of the desert. From its summit, the eye ranges on one side over the vast level wilderness, stretching to the Euphrates, and on the other over the plain bounded by the Tigris and the lofty mountains of Kurdistan. Nisibin, Mardin are both visible in the distance. One can see the hills of Ba'adri and Sheikh Adi. Among the sacred places of this district are 2 villages. Asafa, where 2 ziyaras are found and distinguished from afar by their white spires, and Al-Dina, where 1 ziyara exists. In almost every Sinjar village, there is to be found a covered water, which they use as a fortress during their fights with Kurds or with the Turkish army. The devil worshippers of this locality are commonly called Yezidis, while those of Sheikhan are both known as Yezidis and Dawasani. Another district is Kalitia, which includes all the territory north and northeast of the Tigris in the province of Diyarbakir. The Malaya region includes all the territory west of the Euphrates and Aleppo, and the Sarardar section includes the Caucasus in southern Russia. Some regard Lepkos of India also as Yezidis, who in the early appearance of the sect went there to proselytize the Hindus. And we see that the term could be applied to some other areas where certain things have been preserved among Sufi and monastic groups of other bents. Dwellings. In regard to their dwellings, the Yezidis are divided into two classes. Ahl al-Hadar, the people of the villages, are cultivated land, and Ahl al-Wabar, the people of the tents. The villages are built of clay, stone, or mud, and unburned brick. Well, now modern materials would be used, so another way you can't tell the Yazidi apart, really. A village consists of about 60 houses. A house is divided into 3 principal rooms, opening one into the other. These are separated by a wall about 6 feet high, upon which are placed wooden pillars supporting the ceiling. The roof rests on trunks of trees, raised on rude stones in the center chamber, which is open on one side to the air. The sides of the room are honeycombed with small recesses like pigeonholes. The whole is plastered with white plaster, fancy designs in red being introduced here and there. The houses are kept neat and clean. They say that cleanliness is next to heaven. Neanderthal was buried with red. So, now the people of the tents, like the Arab Bedouins, nomadic, having no houses and no permanent place of abode. They form but a small portion of the Yezidis and are called Kochar. The language of the Yezidis is common with the Kurdish, which belongs to the Iranian group of the Indo-European or Indo-Germanic stock. This Kurmanji possesses a number of dialects not differing much from one another, except the Zaza dialect, which is spoken in eastern Mesopotamia by the Kurds, called Ali Allah. The main characteristic of Kurmanji are the great brevity of its words and the simplicity of its grammatical forms. It is fairly rich in vowels and richer in deep guttural sounds. Though Kurdish is the general language of the Yezidis, the religious mysteries are in Arabic. Both languages are spoken by those living in the Sinjar Hills and in Sheikhan. And going back much further, you'll find some other linguistic connections. Occupation. Generally speaking, the Yezidis are an industrious people, but they do not engage in business. This is due to their belief that any form of business leads to cheating and lying, hence to cursing Malik Ta'us, i.e. the devil. Their usual occupation is agriculture and cattle raising. The Yezidis of Sinjar, who constitute almost the entire population, raise fruit, such as figs and grapes, also almonds and nuts. Jebel Sinjar is famous for its figs. Those who live in the Russian territory, like the sweeper class of India, are mainly engaged in menial work, but those in the districts of Redwan and Midyat are given to housebreaking and highway robbery. They are the terror of those regions. The Yezidis appear in the cities, and when they do, they conceal their peculiarities as much as possible, for the Christians and Muslimin are wont to seek amusement at their expense, and perhaps not respect their fortune-telling and other such and astrology and stuff in the way that they do. That, oh, this is amusement, when it's supposed to be something sacred. Shirk, but sacred. When they find a Yazidi in their company, they draw a circle about him on the ground, from which he superstitiously believes he cannot get out, unless someone breaks it. They annoy him by crying out, Nalat Shaitan, Satan be cursed. Moreover, city people keep aloof from the habitations of these despised devil worshippers. Accordingly, the Yazidi have little intercourse with their neighbors. Notes on the chapter. Isya Yosef received a letter, August 6th, 1907. The Reverend A.N. Andrus of Mardin expresses the opinion that many of the Yezidis around Sinjar may have come from Indian stock on the ground that they are darker and more lithe than the Kurds around him. And the listing of the Yazidi tribes and persecution will probably be the end of these programs for the year, and I'll leave a little bit that is represented in this book that's not related to Isya Joseph before, but let's out my hands over the thing, but see, this is supposed to be the, this is the Arabic version of their tradition, but we see by the year and other evidence that these things go back a lot further, and it may not seem like the Holy Grail of Satanism when you first see it, particularly if you're looking for some movie thing, but one's going to see it. And these texts are all available online, for example, so... And absolute evil beings, even Shaitan, hasn't been completely ignorant and evil, And see, we're going over the text more or less backwards, which, I mean, if you're going to have the Arabic manuscript at the thing, it'd be kind of interesting if you had the Arabic manuscript flowing the direction of an Arabic manuscript. And I think that's it for this one.